Transition, the process of change from one condition to another.
We are now at a new crossroad where change is evident once again.
What does not serve us must transform us anew.
Returning to our original state of oneness and true nature of that which created who we truly are.
Confusion was the way of the past. Enlightenment is the way of the now and future, shedding away the layers of deceit.
We now bring you the transformation of the two who started as one. Our fearless planet never stands still.
Earth has been in a process of transition, and we are not exempt from this remarkable ongoing reality.
Welcome to Transition Radio.
Well, hello, good evening, and welcome live here from New Mexico to the Transition Radio Show. I'm Mark Angelo Cummings.
And I'm Lena Ariel Cummings. We want to thank you for joining us tonight. As you see, we have a nice new background.
Yeah, we got our green screen again.
We've got our green screen. Yeah. We've got some new lights.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of like upping the ante here.
And how do we sound? We want to make sure the audio is okay today. Last week we had a little problem. So if you guys could chat and say, like, you sound okay, you're not sounding okay, let us know if the volume is working.
Do it.
I don't know. We got 3 people watching, so if any of those 3 people could kindly say if it sounds good, doesn't sound good.
We can hear you. You sound like the teacher in
a tin can or something.
Peanuts.
Sounds good. Hey, welcome, Kinetic.
All right.
Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you being here. And good. Everything sounds good. Everything looks good.
Wonderful.
Everything is going crazy in the world, though. Gosh, you know.
It is. It's like you can't stop scrolling these days because there's something new happening almost every minute.
So we got Valid 45 joining us as well. And
Valid 45.
Hello. And she says we sound great. That's good.
Yes.
Last
time it was we went back and watched the show, and it was my microphone was getting all muffled and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was
technology, you never know. She loves the background. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got a green screen, and that helps. And then
No, we're actually in downtown Nashville, right on the street.
Yeah,
it's raining a little bit.
No, not quite. But yeah, so things are heating up in this matrix. I swear, we often talk a lot and say, this can't be real. There's just some simulation that we're living in, and I don't know how it works or it doesn't work, but it's just getting more and more bizarre.
It's just really crazy. I think this is the age of revelation.
Totally.
The age of unveiling. And I hope that the things that need to be unveiled get unveiled.
Yeah, it's about time, I want to say. And I think we've been down this crossroads before. And we keep messing up, and it's like do-over, like Groundhog Day. Or some of those movies where you see, people wake up and they're in the same scenery and they're trying to do something different, but keep making the same mistake, and here we are. So fingers crossed this time around we get it right, because
we get through to the other side.
I know, because it's crazy. But anyway, today we're tracking something that'll make every Christian listener sit up in their chair and question everything they ever thought they knew about the foundation of their faith.
We've spent the last several weeks diving deep into ancient Gnostic texts, historical documents that have been suppressed for centuries, and alternative historical records that, they paint a picture of early Christianity that is radically different from what you'll hear in any church.
And the story we're going to tell you today involves mistaken identity, false prophets, and a conspiracy that spans nearly 2,000 years. It's not comfortable. It's not easy. But it's worth exploring.
The question we're asking is this: What if Jesus wasn't who the church told us he was? What if John the Baptist was actually the true messenger? And what if the entire foundation of Western Christianity is built on a deliberate deception?
So stick with us for the next 90 minutes or so. By the end, you might never look at your Bible the same way again.
So let's start with something fundamental that most people have never even considered. You and I, most people growing up in Christian environments, we were taught one of the most basic theological principles. There's one God, and he created the world. End of story.
Right. It's presented as so obvious, so fundamental, that to question it feels almost heretical. But what if I told you, or what if we told you, that some of the earlier theological traditions in the Middle East saw things completely differently? What if the true spiritual teachers of the ancient world understood that reality wasn't that simple?
It's not. This is where Gnostic philosophy enters the picture. Now, Gnosticism wasn't a single religion. And that's one of the things that we had in our question and answers show last Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Someone was trying to tell us that Gnostic tradition goes back a long ways. And we agree.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we may not have presented that thoroughly in the last show that we did concerning that. But it was more like an entire tradition of understanding that existed alongside early Christianity. And it's crucial to understand. Gnosticism was not invented in the 2nd century. Its roots, well, they go back to the mystery schools of ancient Egypt, Persia, and even further. But the whole concept of like dark magic or dark religion, you know, I mean, I think that's a bit of a leap, you know.
Well, that's what they do. There's a devil under every rock. Everything that is not how they say it is evil. But what if it's the other way around? And that's what, you know, I think that most people are failing to understand.
And dark actually is not evil necessarily. Dark just means that it's not exposed to the light.
Right. And you need the darkness to appreciate the light. So the core Gnostic teaching is what's called radical dualism. Not the dualism where good and evil exist in tension, but the idea that there are fundamentally two different creators operating in this reality. An unknowable, transcending God of true spirit and light, and a much more limited being, the Demiurge, who created the material world we're living in.
Now, this is important. The Gnostics did not invent this idea to be contrarian. They were looking at the actual text of Genesis, and they were asking questions. If God is truly all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good, why would he create a world filled with suffering? Why would he claim in Genesis that he rested, showing fatigue like an ordinary being? Why would he get jealous and angry?
These aren't rhetorical questions to them. They're reading the actual scriptural description and saying this being described in the Old Testament doesn't sound like an ultimate God. It sounds like something else, something far more limited and far more territorial. And this is one of the things that every time I kept reading the Bible and the deeper I dived in, I was just like, this God just doesn't seem like a God at all. He's always angry. He's so petty. He's so OCD. He's got all sorts of issues like a human would, not like a God would.
So the Gnostics developed the cosmology where the ultimate transcendent God, sometimes called the Father of all, creator source, sometimes called the silent God, exists beyond the material universe. This God is ineffable, infinite, and completely removed from the creation of matter.
But there's this region called the pleroma, which means the fullness. It's like a divine realm populated by these entities called eons, emanations of divine consciousness, each one representing different divine attributes: wisdom, truth, love, and understanding. These aren't separate gods. They're more like facets of the ultimate divine consciousness.
Then something goes wrong, or at least something happens that changes, well, pretty much everything. The youngest Eon, the one called Sophia, and Sophia means wisdom, she gets ambitious. She wants to create something on her own without the permission of her divine consort.
And what she creates is monstrous. The Gnostic text describes it as having the head of a lion and the body of a serpent. This creature is called Yaldabaoth, sometimes Saklas, which means the fool, or Samuel, the blind god.
Sophia is so horrified by what she's created that she hides it away in a cloud, ashamed. But this creature, the Demiurge, it grows up in isolation, not knowing where it came from or who it is. It has some divine power inherited from its mother, but it's ignorant. It's blind to the true nature of reality.
And so this blind god, this limited being, looks around at the void and thinks, I will create something. I will be a god myself. And that's where our material universe comes from. That's where we come from.
And this is where the story gets really interesting and starts to become relevant to our everyday experience. Because according to Gnosticism, the Demiurge doesn't create alone. It creates what are called the archons, these rulers, these commanders.
The Gnostic text describes 7 primary archons, each one ruling over one of the 7 planets that were known in the ancient world: the moon, Venus, Mercury, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And this is significant because it's classical astrology. These planets weren't seen as just physical bodies. They were seen as centers of consciousness, intelligence, will.
Each of these archons embodies a different principle of control and limitation. But here's where it gets really profound. The Gnostics taught that when a human soul incarnates into the physical body for the first time, something terrible happens. 7 deadly sins are implanted into your consciousness.
Well, they are pride, greed, lust, wrath, gluttony, envy, and sloth. Now, most people think of these as moral failings, things we choose to do. But Gnosticism teaches that these are archetypal patterns inserted into our soul consciousness by the archons to keep us trapped in the material realm.
Think about it from a control perspective. If you make a being ambitious and prideful, they'll constantly compete with other beings for status. If you make them lustful and greedy, they'll seek material possessions and physical pleasure. If you make them wrathful, they'll create conflict. If you make them envious, they'll be dissatisfied with what they have.
All of these emotional stages generate energy, intense emotional states. And according to both Gnostic teaching and later fourth way philosophy, this emotional energy, this friction, this suffering is essentially a food source. It feeds the beings maintaining the system.
The archons are cosmic prison wardens. That's how the ancient texts describe them. They're not interested in our spiritual evolution. No, they're interested in maintaining the system that produces the energetic food that they depend on.
And the brilliant part of the system, and I mean this is in the sense of horrifying brilliant, is that you're kept in ignorance about what is happening. You don't know you're trapped. You think this is normal. You think your emotional reactions and your desires are just part of being human.
I remember hearing for the first time about how the mitochondria in our body works, the system, and
that's the energy house inside the cell.
Right, but how our own what is it, our own
biodome?
Not biodome. The inner part that the bacteria are feeding off of. What is that?
Yeah, the biodome. That's like your intestines.
But it's not called biodome. It's called something else. But basically, that they are organisms that are living, feeding off of us. And by what we eat is what these different organisms are attracted to. And sometimes they literally manipulate your decision making.
They do.
If you eat a lot of sugar, then those types of bacteria that are attracted to sugar, they're going to find residence inside your, I forget what the name is, it's not biodome, but it's something else. And basically, live inside of you and influence your body. So the Gnostic solution was radically different from what Christianity taught. Microbiome,
yeah.
that's it.
Microbiome, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The Gnostics said the way out of this prison isn't through faith in a savior figure. It's through gnosis, which means knowledge, specifically experiential knowledge of your true nature and your true origin.
Well, because the secret that the archons don't want you to know is this. You're not from this dimension. You're not just flesh and blood. There's a divine spark within you, a fragment of true consciousness that comes from beyond the material realm.
And that is worth really focusing on, the fact that we're not just flesh and blood. I mean, this God, this Yahweh we had been talking about on the prior show, is so obsessed with blood. And
your body.
And your body.
Yeah.
And we're physically, I mean, he literally made the men of the Hebrews have to circumcise themselves, grown babies, young boys, in order to be marked as his.
Right.
And it's we are not just flesh and blood.
And then they create all this, the lust and all these things inside of us. So it's like a vicious cycle that we can't get out of. As we see a lot of individuals that are constantly trying to, feel like they can't stop doing a certain thing, and then they feel terrible about themselves, and then they have to grovel to God and ask for forgiveness. And it's like a vicious cycle that never ends.
Or even the concept of it's become quite popular. If you saw the woman of 1975 at the age of 50, you would see a totally different woman at the time of 2025. Think about Kristi Noem or something, the FBI's director of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
She's done all kinds of facial plastic surgery, and it's such a focus on oh my gosh, my youth is fading, and we've been talking about it.
Or the fear of death, and things like that. And it's if you realize that you're an eternal being, that your spirit is forever, you wouldn't be wasting your time focusing on things that are so trivial, like the materialness that you're living in. You'll be focusing on how to get out of this matrix and how to remember who you are and get in tune with your higher self, with your trueness, with your light. But they don't want that. They want to keep you entangled in this matrix.
So once you remember that, once you truly know it, not just intellectually, but in your being, the archons, they lose power over you. Mm-hmm. Because the only thing that keeps you enslaved is the ignorance of who and what you truly are.
Now, there's an even more dramatic version of the story that appears in a medieval Christian text called the Interrogation Iohannes, a document attributed to John the Baptist, but actually written by medieval Catholic heretics. And this text presents the capture of humanity in even starker terms.
This is really something that we both connect with, this story and its legitimacy of this is what probably happened. So according to this text, what we're dealing with isn't just imprisonment. It's the deliberate capture and torture of beings who were originally divine. The text describes how Satan, and in this context, Satan is another name for the Demiurge, forms bodies out of clay.
And then Satan forces angels, actually divine beings of light, to inhabit these bodies of clay. This is the fall. But not as it's typically understood. It's not a moral fall. It's a physical entrapment. These divine beings are trapped in matter, and they don't even know who they are anymore.
The text is shockingly explicit about what happens next. It says that Satan then seduced or forced the angels to perform sexual acts in these bodies of clay. And through this forced sexuality and lust, more and more divine beings were trapped into physical bodies, generation after generation.
Quite a different story that the Christians will tell you. This is the origin of humanity. According to these teachings, we're not the creation of a loving God. We're the involuntary prisoners of a predatory force that enslaved divine consciousness in matter and then forced reproduction to trap more consciousness.
isn't that something? I mean, to think about that, the whole concept of like be fruitful and multiply isn't some benevolent, now that you love, be fruitful
And multiply.
replenish the earth. It's like, no, it's like every time and a being, a soul, a living spirit comes into a body of flesh, it's another physical representation of a spiritual soul trapped in physical matter. So we're actually perpetuating the system by procreating children.
Yeah. I was glad I didn't have any.
When I first read this, I was shocked, but I was also struck by how it explains so much. Why is sexuality such a dominant force in human psychology? And why is it that it's in the front of our headlines right now? The whole concept, we just watched something about Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, he's now just Andrew.
Yeah.
And how he had this penchant for the most, heinous types of things that one can do.
But his mother, cuddled him. His mother, he was her favorite. And I've always said, mothers, you got to be careful how you raise your kids, especially your boys, because they'll end up, not exactly how you want them to be.
So why is the creation of life tied to desire? And why does lust seem to override the rational decision-making so powerfully?
Well, according to this cosmology, it's not an accident. It's by design. The system is set up so that the very act of reproducing, which is natural and necessary, perpetuates the trap. Every human birth is another divine consciousness imprisoned in matter.
And then the system goes deeper. It implants the 7 deadly sins into your consciousness so that while you're trapped, you're also kept in conflict, competition, suffering, and illusion about what you are and where you came from.
This is the angel trap. It's not just physical imprisonment. It's psychological, emotional, and spiritual imprisonment, all at once. And according to the text, Satan specifically planted these mechanisms, lust, greed, pride, wrath, as guardrails to keep the trapped consciousness from ever waking up.
That is it just hits home that, I remember you said back when you first started Transition Radio Show that you used the symbol of what?
Angel wings. Yeah. And because I've always thought that trans individuals were angels. There's so much talent and so capabilities. And some of them don't even know it because they've been badgered from the moment they're born because we're different. And we've been told how bad we are. We've been told how sinful we are and that we're going to go to hell and all these things. And that's all lies. That's just, again, the trap that the God of this world, the Demiurge, set up along with the archons to keep you imprisoned in that mentality.
And before we continue, I wanted to pay reference and thanks to the person who actually gave us this material to be able to share. And it's from a book, it's called The Archons. Mm-hmm. And one of our listeners, one of our viewers,
Valid 45,
Valid
actually.
45, yeah. She was the one that gave us this download of this book, The Archons, and we were able to bring all the ideas together to come up with this episode, which shows pretty much kind of like in a nutshell what the book was sharing.
Exactly.
So now this ancient teaching is one thing, right? But what if there is a modern technological dimension to this control system? This is where the work of researcher David Icke, who we both have very much lots of respect for. I mean, this guy's a pioneer.
I've been listening to David since, 2007.
Wow.
Yeah.
And David Icke on his own and others becomes relevant. They propose something called the Saturn-Moon Matrix.
The basic premises is this. Saturn and Earth's moon aren't what they appear to be. They're artificial broadcasting systems designed to transmit frequencies that manipulate human consciousness and perception. Now, I want to point out, I don't know about you guys, but I've always wondered, the moon has no rhyme or reason. It almost doesn't even look like it's real. Like half the time it looks like some sort of like hologram put up in the sky. It's sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's that way. You just never know, no rhyme or reason. There's either some satellite up there. I know.
I mean, we did some research last year on, or earlier this year, about like, okay, like we went walking the other day when we were living in Apache Junction. The moon was just going down and it was huge. And then the next day it was gone.
Or it was going up.
It was going up.
Yeah, and it's like,
or it was above.
Yeah, it's like.
So it has, like the sun, at least you know that it's going to be doing that, right? But apparently the moon does a corkscrew or something.
Yeah, it's like what?
And it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
But I know how this sounds. We both know how this sounds, believe me. But let's just follow the logic for a moment. Saturn is the second largest planet in our solar system. It's covered in rings. Scientists know that Saturn radiates 2.5 times more energy than it even receives from the sun. No one can adequately explain where this energy is coming from.
There's also this bizarre hexagonal storm at Saturn's North Pole that's constantly spinning in perfect synchronization with Saturn's radio emissions. No one can explain why a hexagon either. Hexagons are geometric shapes that you don't typically see in nature's chaotic weather system. Circles, spirals, yes, but perfectly formed hexagons is geometrically improbable.
The Saturn-Moon Matrix theory proposes that Saturn's rings, which mainstream science says are composed of ice and rock, well, they actually contain crystalline structures designed to broadcast frequencies throughout the solar system. And the primary target is, guess what?
Earth.
Our planet.
Yep. The moon's role in this system is an amplifier. It's positioned in Earth orbit specifically to receive Saturn's transmissions, then focus them directly at our planet. And it acts like what some researchers call a supercomputer, or an electromagnetic computer, that has been beaming frequencies to Earth for eons.
What do these frequencies do? According to the theory, they create a false reality matrix. They hack into the information broadcast from the center of our galaxy through the sun, and they replace it with a distorted version. They limit human perception and consciousness to a very narrow bandwidth.
The theory proposes that our DNA, specifically the junk DNA, that scientists don't understand, is actually a receiver-transmitter system tuned to the Saturn-Moon Matrix frequencies. Our brains, specifically the reptilian brain at the base of our skull, acts as a decoder for these transmissions.
This is the connection between ancient Gnostic cosmology and modern systems theory. The archons used to be described as immaterial beings of tyranny and limitation. Now, we're talking about electromagnetic frequency manipulation, but it's the same principle. It's a system designed to keep consciousness trapped in illusion.
And it makes sense. It really does. You have that beaming thing just pointing down. You know, everything is energy. Everything is frequency. You know, I mean, you really have to think. And here's the really clever part about how the system perpetuates itself. You receive the false reality broadcast, you perceive it as real, and then you feed that belief back into the system through your thoughts, emotions, and attention. It's an energetic feedback loop.
So you're not just in prison. We're not just in prison. We're actually actively maintaining our own imprisonment by accepting the hacked reality as genuine. You're consuming and we're consuming the false frequencies, and then we are retransmitting them through our consciousness.
The system feeds particularly on low vibrational emotional energy. Just look around you. We're like one giant low vibrational energy.
It's pretty low.
Pretty low right now. Fear, suffering, conflict, shame, guilt, rage. Every war, every financial collapse, every engineer crisis, and there's many of them, these generate intense emotional energy that the system harvest. Have we ever had a time where everybody's like kumbaya, we're all so happy and everything's great? No, I mean, you look back at history or the history that they've shown us that we have, and everything's been turmoil. How many wars have we had? How many problems? It's like, dude, we don't catch a break. And now, worse than ever, it's like they're on like, let's just ramp it up because something's about to happen.
In Gurdjieff's terms, which we will get to, we become quote unquote food for the moon. We're not being imprisoned passively. We're being herded and harvested like livestock.
So let's shift to George Gurdjieff and P.D. Ouspensky for a moment, because they developed a comprehensive teaching about human consciousness that aligned remarkably with Gnostic cosmology, even though they didn't frame it in those terms.
Gurdjieff was a Russian mystic and a teacher who traveled extensively through the Middle East and Central Asia in the early 1900s. He encountered various esoteric traditions, Sufism, Eastern Christianity, occult schools, and he synthesized them into something he called the fourth way.
So the core teaching is that most humans are essentially asleep. We go through life believing we're conscious, but we're actually operating mechanically, driven by unconscious programs and external influences, kind of like autopilot. We have no real I. We're a plurality of different impulses and reactions masquerading as a unified consciousness.
Ouspensky, who was Gurdjieff's student and the one who wrote down and systematized these teachings, called this state, quote unquote, waking sleep. You're technically awake, your eyes are open, you're functioning in the world, but you're not truly conscious. You're in a semi-hypnotic state responding to stimuli without genuine choice. And that's one of the things that we've heard about in the past, is that a lot of things that people do in a daily, like their daily commute, their daily, chores, or their daily, their cooking, or if they're in the office, it's more like they're responding to a system, right? They're not really actively present with, you catch yourself driving and all of a sudden you're there, and you don't realize.
Yeah, and it's almost like a colony of bees or a colony of ants, and they're all like on this little program pattern that they take, and that's pretty much us. I mean, how many times do you actually contact your higher self? How many times do you actually catch yourself being present in what you're doing? It's all programmed. It's all controlled. But here's where it gets really relevant to what we've been discussing. Gurdjieff taught something controversial. We are food for the moon. He said the moon is an electromagnetic entity that pulls energy from all organic life on Earth. It feeds on the vital essence of creatures as they die.
That's fascinating to think that moon, just think about the eclipses you mentioned earlier today.
I've never been a fan of looking at eclipse. I think there's just something so nefarious about it.
And you would be in complete agreement with native traditions and stuff. I mean, when the last one came across last year, native tribes were like, must stay inside, must not go outside, don't look at it, don't. Yeah. But then it's amazingly here in westernized world America and around the world, people literally have parties to go look at it.
And then they have special glasses. And it's just like even now what's happening with all these auroras and meteorites, that there is something heavily going on. And people are none the wiser.
No.
They're just none the wiser.
But for humans, because we have the capacity for consciousness that other animals don't have, the moon's interest in us is different. We produce a unique kind of energy through our emotional reactions, our psychological states, our suffering.
Gurdjieff said that humans are like sheep that the moon tends. It cleans us, it feeds us, and it shears us, keeping us in the condition it wants us in. And we serve the moon whether we're passive or active, whether we're unconscious or attempting to evolve. The only way out is through genuine esoteric work.
The fourth way teaches that there is a difference between evolution and involution. Passive mechanical humans serve involution. We are devolving, being used. But through conscious work on ourselves, through what Gurdjieff called self-remembering, we can shift from being slaves of mechanical law to servants of conscious development.
So Kinetic says, I've never heard about any of this stuff. Very interesting. It is very interesting indeed. And we're glad you're here joining us and partaking in this, what I believe is crucial information.
It is. It's information that many people never get to hear,
No.
And it's kind of stored away or something. The mainstream doesn't talk about it.
No.
People just don't really have the ability to take time to really research.
And they do that on purpose. They don't give us time to really look into the truth, the real truth, not the stuff they've been feeding us since we're a little kid. Jesus was born in a manger and he came and died for you, and all these little the fairy tales that you tell children. We're adults now. Our consciousness is trying to evolve. We need to break free from this paradigm, from this continual loop. It's rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. It's time to shatter this illusion.
But it's interesting how social media has designed it so that the most impactful things that they want to be on everyone's mind, those things are. You go to Google News, you go to Facebook, you go to Instagram, you go to X, you find things, you go to TikTok, you find things that are algorithmically programmed for the masses to know about. We all know about Epstein's files right now.
Oh yeah, that's all it's been talked about.
We know about the ballroom.
Yeah, we do know about the
We
ballroom.
know about the shutdown.
Yeah.
But
things that really matter to grow our spirit, our consciousness, to free ourselves from this prison, it gets hidden. And then you have the sheep that continue to want to push the same status quo. Jesus came and died for you. He loves you. It's what does that solve? What has that ever solved in all the years that we've been living on this planet as humans? So self-remembering is the practice of maintaining continuous awareness of your own existence and actions. It's harder than it sounds. Most of the time, consciousness is identified completely with thoughts, emotions, and sensations. You're not observing them. You are them.
The idea is that if you can create a gap in observing consciousness that watches your thoughts and emotions without being swept away by them, you become less mechanical. And isn't that what meditation teaches, is that you separate from the you, from the I?
Yeah,
and
from your thoughts, from the everyday, you're taking time to breathe and try to be in nothingness and to be in that area of nothingness that will literally allow you to tap into your higher self.
So you become less controlled by external programming.
So this connects directly to what the Gnostics taught about gnosis. It's not about believing the right things. It's about knowing yourself, really knowing yourself in ways that breaks the hold of the control system. How many of you could actually say that you actually know yourself? Not the self that you were brought up to believe you are, or the self that you created through this world, this matrix, but your spirit self, without the religious dogma, without the programming, going deep inside and getting to feel who you are without these bodies.
And Gurdjieff was clear. This isn't something that happens automatically or even easily. Most of humanity, it will remain mechanical. The system is designed to keep us mechanical, but those who choose to work on themselves have the possibility of evolution. And that reminded me of the times we were working out at Planet Fitness. The motif that they use, the design that they have in every single one of their places is a cog in a wheel.
Yeah, you're a cog in the wheel. That's basically it. You really don't matter. That's what they're trying to. They just want your votes, but not that even that doesn't even matter. It's because it's a game of ping pong, Republican, Democrat, and both wings belong to the same bird. No one has solutions. Not in this plane. If we continue to play the rules of this earth, we'll continue to come back here and we continue to make the same mistakes, loop after loop. Now we come to the part that will make Christian listeners really uncomfortable.
Sorry.
Because we're going to look at what historical evidence actually suggests about Jesus, John the Baptist, and the founding of Christianity.
For centuries, the official church story has been John the Baptist was a forerunner who prepared the way for Jesus. Jesus was the Son of God, the Messiah. John's role was secondary, preparing the people for something greater.
But there's an ancient religious sect called the Mandeans that preserved a completely different historical account. The Mandeans are still around today. They're a living tradition that traces themselves back to John the Baptist, and they call themselves the baptizers or the followers of John.
And they are very explicit. Jesus was not the true Messiah. Jesus was a false prophet who corrupted the teachings of John the Baptist. In fact, according to the Mandean tradition, John exposed Jesus as a deceiver.
Now, this isn't a fringe theory with no basis. There are actually evidence in the New Testament itself that suggests conflict between John's followers and Jesus' followers. The Gospel of Luke mentions that people were expecting John to be the Messiah. John 3:25-30 mentions a dispute between John's disciples and Jesus' disciple about purification.
But the Mandean texts go much deeper. They describe Jesus as someone who came to John for baptism, but then corrupted the baptismal rites and teachings. According to the Mandean book of John, Jesus perverted words of life and changed them into darkness and overturned all the rites.
So the Mandean texts actually preserve accounts of what John the Baptist taught and how it differed from what Jesus taught. John taught what they call dualistic philosophy, truth and error, light and darkness, life and death. It was essentially Gnostic teaching. He ordained 365 prophets and sent them out to teach.
Meanwhile, Jesus moved away from these teachings. According to Mandean accounts, he was identified with one of the planetary archons, specifically Mercury or Venus, not with the true Christ. The true Christ in Mandean theology is a spirit principle, the Logos, not a human being.
And I guess what I've always thought of as the Christ consciousness. So this is crucial in authentic Gnostic Christianity, which is what the Mandeans preserved. The Christ isn't a person named Jesus. It's a cosmic principle of divine light and wisdom. The Christ logo is described as being invincible spirit.
The Mandeans distinguished between John, who they called Enosh Uthra, or the good man, and the various false prophets who came after him. They taught that divine souls could inhabit human bodies. But what matters is the teaching, not the person.
So here's a historical detail that's fascinating. According to Josephus, the Jewish historian, John the Baptist was killed by Herod Antipas around 35 or 36 CE, possibly out of fear that John's popularity and moral authority might inspire rebellion. Jesus was crucified, according to the Christian tradition, around 33 CE.
So the timeline actually makes sense for John being the senior figure, the established religious leader, and Jesus being a young follower who went in a different direction. In fact, the Mandean account describes John, as baptizing for 42 years before Jesus even appeared.
Then comes the crucial moment. Jesus seeks baptism from John. According to the Mandean account, John was hesitant about this, but he was commanded from heaven to do it. And once Jesus was baptized by John, he essentially went his own way and started teaching different doctrines.
According to the Mandeans, John then exposed Jesus as a false Messiah. But by this point, Jesus had gathered followers, and his movement eventually grew into what became Christianity. John's followers didn't disappear, though. They became the Mandaeans, the ones who preserved the authentic teaching.
The Mandaeans' critique becomes even more pointed when it comes to what happened after Jesus died. They describe how the religion that called itself Christianity, particularly Roman institutional Christianity, corrupted Jesus' teaching even further.
The Mandaeans see Roman Christianity not as a continuation of authentic spiritual teaching, but as a system of what? Control, full of false doctrine, priestly hierarchy, and empty rituals. This is where we connect back to our archon theory. The system didn't just trap consciousness and matter, it then doubled down and created false religions to keep that consciousness deceived about the nature of its imprisonment.
So this is the bridge between the ancient Gnostic teachings and what happened to Christianity in the first few centuries. Because the institutional church wasn't just misinterpreting Jesus' teaching, it was deliberately suppressing alternative teachings and creating a unified doctrine that served political control.
The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE is a historical moment where this became official. The Roman Emperor Constantine called together all the Christian bishops and basically said, we need one unified church with one unified doctrine that can serve as the ideological backbone of the empire.
Before Nicaea, there were dozens of different Christian movements with different understanding of Jesus, different texts they consider sacred, different theological positions. There was genuine diversity and debate.
After Nicaea, the church declared certain texts canonical and other texts heretical. Gnostic writings were destroyed. Gnostic teachers were branded as heretics, and a completely new doctrine was created. The idea that Jesus was not just an enlightened being or a messenger, but was literally the Son of God, co-equal with God the Father.
This is theologically significant because it completely changed the power dynamic. If Jesus is just a human teacher who achieved enlightenment through gnosis, then anyone could potentially do what he did. You could achieve enlightenment, you could access the divine directly.
But if Jesus is the literal Son of God, uniquely divine, then you can't. Only Jesus has direct access to God. You need priests to mediate between you and God. You need an institutional church to tell you what to believe and how to behave.
It's the perfect system of control. Genius, right? The church becomes the gatekeeper to salvation, and any human who tries to teach that they can directly access God and truth, well, they're heretics. They're dangerous. They must be eliminated.
The Gnostics understood this immediately. They saw what was becoming Christianity. Roman Christianity was not a spiritual movement. It was a political and control system using religious language.
And they saw it as serving the Demiurge's purpose, because the Demiurge doesn't want humans to know the truth about themselves and their origin. Just look at Genesis. Just look at the Tower of Babel, right? The Demiurge wants them trapped in illusion, serving the system, believing false doctrine. Man has become like one of us. God knows what they'll do. Let us come down and confuse their language. The man knows as much as we do.
It's a perfect setup for the continuation of the system that they constructed to control all of humanity.
Totally.
And to trap us in a repeating cycle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even in the afterlife, people are waiting for Jesus. They run to Jesus and the cycle repeats.
Never go to the light.
Enter into, come, enter, you know.
Because that light is that gateway of coming out of your mother's uterus back into the world. It's
perpetuated.
Nonstop loop.
So, from the Gnostic perspective, the institutional church was literally an archontic system, a system designed by the forces of limitation and control to keep humanity imprisoned in ignorance.
Now, I want to be careful here. We're not saying that everyone in the church was consciously conspiring. Many church fathers were genuine believers who thought they were preserving true Christianity. But the system itself, the hierarchical structure, the claim to exclusive truth, the suppression of alternative teachings, that system served control.
And the really insidious part, the church taught people to value obedience, humility, self-denial, and to view the body and sexuality as sinful. These are exactly the psychological conditions you would want to impose if your goal was to keep consciousness limited and trapped.
And isn't that what Christianity does best? So, in Gurdjieff terms, the church became one of the primary mechanisms through which humans remained mechanical and asleep. It kept people in a state of dependence, both psychologically and spiritually.
And it worked. For nearly 2,000 years,
Yeah.
the vast majority of Western humans have believed what the church taught them to believe, never questioning whether there might be alternative understandings of Jesus, God, or their own nature.
And then they keep other people. Like, every time I write something on my Facebook or share something about my transition, I get a Christian that comes in, tries to tell me how much Jesus loves me, that I'm sinning, that I have to, like, this, that, and the other. It's like, please learn who you're worshiping. Please read your Bible. Please understand the truth. You're being duped. I was able to escape that. Please don't try to get me back in.
I know.
We need to talk about something that seems crazy, but actually makes sense when you think about power structures and psychological manipulation. The idea of organic portals, quote unquote.
Organic portals are described in esoteric literature as humanoid beings. They look human, they have human bodies, but they fundamentally lack authentic soul consciousness. They are like sophisticated biological automata, programmed beings without genuine inner consciousness.
There's a lot of them out there. I know this sounds like science fiction, but bear with us. The theory suggests that a certain percentage of humanity might consist of these beings rather than being with genuine conscious souls.
Or they're otherwise referred to as NPCs.
Yes.
And this theory connects to something we know from psychology, psychopathy.
Right.
Psychopaths, right, are individuals who display a complete absence of empathy, conscience, and emotional connection. They can manipulate others, commit terrible acts, and feel nothing about it.
I think we have someone in the White House that might fit that description.
Just can't imagine.
Yeah, and a lot of his people. Yeah. So mainstream psychology treats psychopathy as a disorder, a pathology. But what if it's something else? What if certain individuals literally don't have the capacity for empathy and conscience because they're not the same type of being as conscious humans? And I said, I think there's a 50-50 on this earth.
Yeah,
Because
maybe more.
Maybe
Who
more.
knows?
Let's hope not, though. I'm hoping.
The theory goes that psychopaths or sociopaths might actually be organic portals, beings without souls who are operating through inherited programming and without any internal ethical constraints.
And here's the really interesting part. These individuals, because they lack conscience and empathy and can be quite intelligent, often rise to positions of power. They become CEOs, politicians, military leaders, religious authorities, on and on.
Think about some of history's most destructive figures. Genghis Khan, various dictators. People who have committed atrocities without any visible remorse or internal conflict, bombing boats in the Pacific. What if those beings are literally different? Not wounded humans, but a different species of consciousness entirely.
Yeah, well, this theory would explain something that's always been puzzling. How can some humans commit such terrible acts so coldly and so effectively? Most humans have conscience. We feel guilt. We experience empathy. But some seem completely immune to these things.
The organic portal theory suggests that these individuals are operating according to their programming. They're not broken humans. They're serving their nature, which is to control and to exploit.
Now, this is controversial territory, and I want to be honest about that. This is speculative thinking based on esoteric teachings combined with psychological observations. There's not mainstream scientific evidence for the organic portal concept.
But it does provide a framework for understanding certain patterns we observe in the world. The consistent presence of individuals in positions of power who seem to lack basic human empathy. The way systems of control perpetuate themselves seemingly automatically.
And it raises a crucial question for Christians and others. If this is true, then the history of oppression and control we see across human civilization might not just be a result of human sin and free will gone wrong. It might be the result of a system designed to keep conscious beings imprisoned and controlled.
That's something to think about for sure. We need to talk about symbols and power of sacred geometry, particularly the flower of life, because this is where ancient spiritual knowledge and modern consciousness control intersect.
The flower of life is one of the most famous sacred geometry symbols in the world. It appears in the ancient Egyptian temples, in medieval alchemical texts, in modern New Age spirituality. It's a pattern of 19 overlapping circles that form a mandala-like shape.
In conventional spiritual understanding, the flower of life is seen as a symbol of creation, unity, cosmic harmony. It supposedly encodes the fundamental mathematical and geometric principles underlying reality. And one of the things that I remember hearing about was the whole concept of the Fibonacci sequence, how life is actually, it's like got a pattern, like a flower blooms, and then you could see like this geometric pattern in a snowflake, in our fingerprint.
How the head, the little thing in our head, how everything goes down this way.
How the Fibonacci sequence is based on death perpetuating after life. So everything is born to die, and everything that dies is eaten by something else.
Right.
So it's not like life to life.
No.
So this flower of life, it might not really be named correctly.
And I think that the Demiurge created this planet to be that way.
For sure, yeah.
We're dead.
Yeah.
There's death
you
around.
see a flower,
Yeah.
And you see it bloom, and then it gets ugly.
Yeah.
It dies.
And that part might be true. The flower of life does contain within it many important geometric relationships. The seed of life, the Visca Pisces, Metatron's cube. All of these geometric relationships do appear in nature, in atomic structures, in DNA organization.
But here's the controversial part. Some esoteric teachings, traditions, they teach that the flower of life, when used with specific ritualistic intention, can function as a magical symbol for consciousness imprisonment, not liberation.
So the theory is that certain occult orders and black magic practitioners have used the flower of life as a lock, quote unquote, or container for consciousness. They use its geometric properties to reinforce three-dimensional material reality and prevent consciousness from transcending into higher dimensions.
In other words, the symbol can be animated towards different purposes depending on the intention behind it. It's not inherently evil, but it can be used as a tool of control.
This connects to something broader, the idea that our entire reality, our perception of the world, is being hacked at a fundamental level, not just through electromagnetic frequencies or psychological manipulation, but through the use of sacred geometry itself.
If reality is fundamentally geometrical and mathematical, if the universe is literally composed of geometry at the quantum level, then manipulating that geometry could theoretically manipulate reality itself.
This is getting into territory that's hard to verify, but it's worth considering. Because if our perception of reality is being constructed through multiple layers of control, physical, genetic, electromagnetic, Saturn-Moon Matrix, psychological, religious dogma, and geometric, sacred geometry, then understanding these mechanisms is crucial to breaking free from them.
The ancient mystery schools, they understood this. They knew that symbols had power. They knew that geometry affected consciousness. But this knowledge was either lost or more likely deliberately suppressed by institutional religion.
And in its place, we got a religion that told us symbols don't matter, that sacred geometry is superstition, that the material world is all that's real, all of which serve to keep consciousness imprisoned in materiality.
So when we look at something like the flower of life, we're seeing both sides of this dynamic. We're seeing genuine sacred knowledge about reality's fundamental nature, but we're also potentially seeing a tool that's been repurposed to lock consciousness into limitation.
Let's synthesize what we've been discussing and talk about what the core message is. The teachings that the control system has worked hardest to suppress.
The fundamental teaching is this: you are not what you think you are. You are not a limited physical being whose consciousness ends at death. You are a fragment of divine consciousness that has been deliberately imprisoned in matter by forces that want to use you as an energy source.
And the second teaching is the imprisonment is real, but it's not final. There's a way out. And the way out requires knowledge, not blind faith, but direct experiential knowledge of your true nature and the true nature of the reality you inhabit.
The prison is maintained through a system of lies and limitation, genetic programming through DNA, electromagnetic programming through the Saturn-Moon Matrix, psychological programming through religion and culture, emotional programming through the 7 deadly sins, and spiritual programming through false teachings about God, Jesus, and, well, salvation.
Yeah. So breaking free requires work at all these levels. It's not enough to have intellectual knowledge. You need to work on yourself psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. You need to develop consciousness that can observe itself and choose differently.
This is what both Gurdjieff and the ancient Gnostics taught, and it's radically different from what Christianity teaches. Christianity says, believe in Jesus and you will be saved. Someone else has done the work for you. All you need to do is have faith.
But the Gnostic and fourth way teaching says only you can do this work. No one can save you because you're not really imprisoned by sin. You're imprisoned by ignorance. And ignorance can only be overcome by knowledge, by gnosis.
And here's the most radical teaching of all. The being we were taught to call God, Yahweh, is not the true God. Yahweh is the Demiurge. It's a limited, jealous, territorial being that created the material world and the systems of control that keep consciousness trapped.
The true God, the source of all consciousness, all light, all love, is infinitely beyond this Demiurge's creation. And fragments of the true God are within you. That divine spark is what gives you consciousness in the first place.
This is the teaching that threatens the control system the most, because if you know this and you really know it, not just intellectually, but in your being, then you're no longer controllable. You're no longer dependent on any authority outside yourself.
And that's why it's been suppressed. That's why Gnosis texts were destroyed. That's why teachings about the true nature of consciousness were branded as heretical. That's why institutional religion has worked so hard to convince you that you're dependent, limited, and in need of external salvation. I mean, what is the whole purpose of professing Jesus as your Lord and Savior? What has that ever done for anybody? Look at where we are. Continual same. And it's like, what's the definition of madness? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We've been doing this Jesus thing for how long now? Where are we?
Yeah. The control system, it needs your ignorance. It needs your belief that you're just a body, that you're just a limited consciousness destined for one lifetime. It's appointed for man once to die, and then the judgment. It needs you to accept authority figures who claimed to have the truth.
But the moment you start questioning these basic assumptions, the moment you start pursuing genuine knowledge about yourself and reality, the system's power over you begin to break down.
As we wrap up, we both want to acknowledge something. This information, well, yeah, it's a lot to process. If you grew up a Christian, this is asking you to question foundational beliefs about God, Jesus, and salvation.
And we're not asking you to simply replace those beliefs with new ones from us. What we're asking is that you question, that you investigate, that you look at the sources, the Nagmati text, the mundane scripture, the teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, and from your own conclusions.
We have someone else coming?
No, I'm going to put the number. I'm trying.
Okay. There's a reason these teachings were preserved despite centuries of suppression. There's a reason they're resurfacing now, because humanity is ready for a deeper truth about itself and its potential.
For Christians listening, we're not saying Jesus didn't matter or that his teachings weren't valuable. We're saying that what the institutional church did with his teaching was distort them for purposes of control. And there's an older, deeper teachings preserved in Gnostic and esoteric traditions that point to something more profound.
For everyone, the message is the same. You have more power than you think. You and your consciousness is more real and more important than the material circumstances of your own life. And the systems that surround you, religious, political, economic, technological, many of them are designed to keep you from realizing that power.
But awareness is the first step to freedom. Once you see the system, once you understand how it works, you have the possibility of operating differently.
This is what self-remembering means. This is what gnosis means. It's not about adopting a new belief system. It's about awakening to what you actually are.
We encourage you to dive deeper into these topics. Read the Gnostic texts, read Gurdjieff and Ouspensky. Investigate the alternative history we've discussed. Question your assumptions. Meditate on who and what you actually are beneath your beliefs and your programming.
And recognize that the very act of questioning is revolutionary. The control system depends on your acceptance of its narratives. The moment you start investigating those narratives, you are already beginning to break free. Yeah.
So, I mean, I know it's hard. I know that many of us from a very young age have been taught to believe a certain way, and old habits die hard. But if you really start to dive deep and investigate and start to look at the world around you, just like in the movie The Matrix, when Neo was told, do you not sense something is off? Do you not feel something is different? Do you want the red pill? Do you want the blue pill? Which pill do you want? What do you want to stay in this reality and continue this vicious cycle of reincarnation, being brought back, continue to be a slave? Do you want to continue your reactionary nature, be defensive to everything? Or do you want to change that pattern? Once you change that pattern, the archons don't have any control over you.
It's true. I mean, it's very true. These are concepts that they should be teaching at grade levels.
Totally, but they don't. They teach us everything is about how to be a good little slave behind a cubicle, get your degree, get yourself full of debt when you go to college so that you have to continue working their system. It's an imprisonment. We're living on a prison planet, but there's a way out. And that's what Gnosis is all about. If you continue to follow your religious beliefs, you're going to continue in the enslaved system. It's time to wake up. It's time, when they tell you, the woke, please be woke.
Yeah.
Because that is the way out. They want to continue to dominate and control you, and they want you to be asleep. I know it's not easy. I know it's hard. I know there are people that just can't do it. but everyone's life depends on it. Let's see. Go ahead. Can you read it?
Can't read it.
I'm so glad you found this information online and could talk about it here. Definitely, we definitely appreciate you sharing that book. It's I've been listening to David Icke for a very long time, so a lot of this stuff is pretty familiar. Because he was one of the many that I was like really resonated.
Jordan Maxwell.
Jordan Maxwell is another one. I mean, I started my awakening back in 2007. I got rid of everything I owned, my business, and my wife at that time, Violet, and we just headed on a spiritual journey because I knew that the life that we were leading was not the true life. And I wanted to really like connect with my higher self and really, and then, life brings you back into the matrix and, religion.
Has a way of pulling you.
Yeah. But luckily, I mean, once you know the truth, you can't unlearn it. You can't just throw it away. You'll eventually come back to it. And it's a work in progress. It's something that requires time and effort and meditation and really asking the hard questions,
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to thank you guys because we've explored some of the most challenging and transformative teachings about consciousness, reality, and human potential, and the transition that you're seeking from unconsciousness to consciousness, from limitation to potential, from control to freedom. Well, that transition begins with you. It begins with the question. It begins with the willingness to look beneath the surface. I mean, those are the hard things that so many people and so many of our bad habits of how we were raised teach us to brush things under the rug, to cover up, to make excuses for, to blame others, to look to depend on others for, salvation, or
depend on
to look
things.
for, So these are hard things.
Yeah, but it's doable. Because I think right now we're in a time where we're waking up. A lot of people are definitely waking up.
So the lid 45 says,
my awakening in 1988 after my mother's passing, and I began to research eschatology, and from there it just took off. I'm still at it, and as an old gal. Well, you're doing great. I mean, it's so important. People don't realize, they think we're here to fill up our bank accounts with money, to collect things, but we're here for gnosis, for knowledge, for remembering. Because we know all these things, but we were so dumbed down by these archons, by the system, that our DNA between the moon and all these things and all these devices that alter our natural vibration, our frequency, keeps us dumbed down and asleep. But there's something happened. There's a vibration change, and we could see it. The planet is changing. Things are definitely changing. And we're at that cusp again for awakening.
I just can't help. Every time we go out for a walk in the morning and we see the bright sun, it just doesn't look the same as when we were kids looking at it. It was yellower, I swear. It was yellower. It wasn't this white hot ball in the sky.
Yeah.
And those are the perception changes that the Matrix programs, into being.
Yeah, when you start to really, like the movie The Matrix, when Neo started to realize that something was off, something was different, and you stop for a moment, you're not that on autopilot like you normally are on a daily basis, and you stop, and you're present, and you start to listen within, because everything you need is within you. The external stuff is just there to dumb you down, to keep you like, oh, look at the little bunny rabbit, that kind of mentality. But once you stop, you center yourself, you meditate, you really start to question everything. Then your higher self, source of all, will connect with you. The true monad, not the God of the Bible, not all these religious figures that they've taught you to worship and believe, but the true essence that you're part of will allow you to see things very differently.
I remember watching back in the 90s, the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray and what was her name? McDowell, I forget her first name. But basically the premise was he's back in life going over the same things, and he doesn't realize it till like so many times that he's been through it that he realizes that the guy's going to fall off the step on the sidewalk, and that something else is going to happen, and all these predictable things are going to take place until you're present with what's going on. You're going, wait a second, this is programming.
Yeah.
This is a system designed to repeat itself, to go in cycles, to repeat itself in patterns, to be predictive programming. I mean, there's many times you've told me, you said, I can read people because I see the patterns.
Yeah, people are very predictable. I could read what's going to happen next, what the person is going to do next, what they're thinking. And I've had this ability since I was a kid. I died when I was around 1 year old. And as a child, I've always been able to tell people's future and things of that nature. But, when you tap in, you really, because everything is cycles, everything is like a frequency. So Valid 45 says, I too see the moon as something I don't remember, and also the sun. Yes. And these are things like when we go on our walks, whether it's the moon, the sun, or something, it's like, something just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
But again, it's when you stop and question and break the cycle, you break the same autopilot thing that we do, then all of a sudden you're able to hear that inner voice. And once you start hearing that inner voice and you start making that connection, your life changes dramatically. I mean, you're still going to suffer. You're still going to have pain because we're in these bodies. But you're going to look at life totally different.
Well, next week, we're going to talk about this kind of forgotten interview that was done by Dick Cavett of the rock legend. What's his name?
David Bowie.
David Bowie. When David Bowie was on his show, probably higher than a kite, and he was talking about a concept called black noise. Noise. It's going to be an interesting show because we're going to talk about, how did David Bowie know about this? Who was his circle of influence at the time, the elites probably, that would have told him about a secret technology that literally, according to him, can crack an entire city. And we think about old world, we think about things that have happened in our modern society that cracks the psyche of a group of people. That there can be an old world technology of accessing a frequency that literally can control humans' minds.
And I find it interesting that a lot of these celebrities, it's almost like to become a celebrity, you have to become part of some sort of secret society. And in the secret society, they give you information of what is actually real. But sometimes these performers, they can't handle it. And they literally, like what happened with Britney Spears, she nearly went almost crazy. And a lot of these performers that have actually been offed, supposedly a drug overdose or all these different things, because when they want to speak out, the system doesn't want them to speak out. So I find it very interesting.
Michael Jackson literally came out with a song called
They Don't Care.
They Don't Care About You.
They don't care about us.
They don't care about us.
Yeah, and then you have Prince, who is talking about those lines in the sky and how people are getting angrier since those lines on the sky. And there's just been a lot of performers that try to speak truth sometimes through their songs, but they're offed.
And I think they're also used by the system to encode us as well, through a song.
Yeah, but then, some of them get a conscience, and they're like, I can't continue to do this, But we're definitely, I mean, the world that we're living in right now, it's like it's prime for the awakening. I mean, if you were dead asleep before and you're seeing what's happening now, there's something speaking to you.
I mean, we just had an election of a guy who is being ridiculed by the right-wing media as a potential terrorist, as a Muslim, background, and basically they're just getting this guy, and then Trump actually has an Al-Qaeda operative literally in the Oval Office. And what is he doing there? He's like talking to him and he's spraying him with cologne or something. And it's like, is this a real reality? Are we living in some other form of existence or something?
I just think we're creating this
into a time warp
to wake ourselves. We're creating this to wake ourselves up. I think we're literally like,
how much can we be like, oh no, those files, they don't exist. They said in July or something like that. And people are like, what?
And now all these emails are coming out. And then we've got this 3 Atlas going around and it's doing things, and there's another one coming in, and you got all this stuff. Like half the time we're like,
we had the drones last year flying around New Jersey.
It's just,
yeah.
Let's see. She says TDS is eating you away.
Trump derangement system. No, I don't think it's derangement. I think it's literal acknowledgement of the lunacy that's taking place in our government right now.
It's like you would think it was a made-for-TV movie, a comedy of some sort, because it's just like, is this for real? Like every day there's like a slew of things, and it's like you can't keep up anymore. You just like, there's like this, like you become numb to everything, just about.
Yeah. Maybe literally. That's the whole idea.
Maybe. Who knows? But anyway, I hope you guys got something out of the show. I hope that if there's any Christians watching, because I share the links around, that, at least you start to think, instead of just being a blind faith believer of a story that has been around forever. Jesus was supposed to come back quickly. No one that is living around this time will pass away before I come back, meaning that he was going to come back during the time that the people that were living were still alive. So, just run it through your brain a little bit. Read that Bible. There's so many clues in that Bible to let you know what's going on.
That's all we got for the show tonight. Yeah. And thank you for watching us. And whatever resonated with you, please research it more, and whatever didn't, we're just happy to share the information.
Yeah. And again, if there's any questions or concerns, write the comments down in the comment section, or if you want to email us at transitionradioshow@gmail.com. All the links are in the description area. Please remember to subscribe, hit that notification button, share, and we'll see you on Thursday with another riveting...
On Tuesday.
Today is Tuesday. No, that's right.
Yeah,
today's Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah.
Tuesday. Sorry.
Tuesday.
All right. I'm getting old. But anyway, have a good night. We love you. But remember to always love yourselves too. Good night. Thank you too, Ali. Have a good night, folks.